Hi, Virgo. There's a specific kind of connection that doesn't follow the rules, not the rules of timing, not the rules of circumstance, not the rules that well meaning people around you will inevitably try to apply when they see something that doesn't fit neatly into the categories they've been taught to use for love. And one of the most disorienting versions of that rule breaking, one of the most quietly radical forms that real connection can take, is when it arrives across a gap in years. When two people find each other and the calendar says one thing and the connection says something else entirely. I want to talk about that today. Honestly, without the usual softening, without the disclaimers that people attach to anything that makes them slightly uncomfortable. Because what some of you are carrying right now, this connection, this person, this thing that doesn't fit the template, deserves to be spoken about clearly, not around the edges, directly, with the respect it actually deserves. Because here's what I keep coming back to: love that finds its way across a difference in years between two adults who choose each other freely, clearly, with full awareness, is not a mistake. It is not a phase. It is not confusion dressed up as connection. It is, in many cases, one of the most deliberate forms of love there is, because it requires both people to choose each other, despite everything that says they shouldn't. And that choice, made consciously, made repeatedly, made in the face of other people's opinions, is not weakness. It is one of the more courageous things two people can do together. First layer, the gap itself. And I want to start here because most conversations about age gaps skip this part entirely. They jump immediately to the opinions, what other people think, what society says, what the statistics suggest, without ever actually sitting with what the gap feels like from inside the connection. From inside, it doesn't feel like a gap. That's the thing. From inside, it feels like two people who operate at the same frequency, who understand each other in ways that have nothing to do with having been born in the same decade, who find in each other something that they haven't found in people who are more conventionally matched, something that feels inexplicably more like home than anything that was supposed to fit did. Uh, and that inexplicability, that inability to fully explain why this person, why this connection, why this particular combination of two people works in ways that shouldn't on paper, is actually one of the most reliable signs that something real is happening. Because real things rarely explain themselves neatly. Real things are felt first and understood later if ever, and what you feel with this person in the quiet moments, in the ordinary conversations, in the specific way they see you. And you see them, that feeling doesn't care about the math. And maybe, just maybe, it never should have. Second layer, what the difference in years actually brings. And I want to go here because this is the part that's almost never acknowledged. The specific gifts that come from a connection where two people have walked different lengths of road before arriving at each other. There is something that comes with having lived longer, not superiority, not authority, something quieter than that, a particular quality of settledness, of knowing through the specific education of experience what matters and what doesn't, of having already navigated certain storms and arrived on the other side of them with a clarity that only comes from having been through something, not from having read about it. And there is something that comes with being earlier in the journey, not naivety, not inexperience in the dismissive sense, something rarer, a particular quality of aliveness, of approaching things without the calcification that can come from too many disappointments, of still having access to a kind of open, unguarded wonder that more years can sometimes erode in people who haven't been careful to protect it. When these two qualities meet, when settled wisdom encounters alive wonder, something happens between two people that neither of them could have produced alone. One person is reminded of what it felt like to approach things freshly. The other person is given a kind of steadiness, a kind of reference point that their own journey hadn't yet provided. And in that exchange, in that particular dynamic of two people, giving each other something the other genuinely needs, a very specific kind of intimacy becomes possible. The kind that feels from the inside like being completely met. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe that's exactly what this is. And maybe the gap in years, rather than being the obstacle, that everyone outside the connection insists it is actually part of what makes the meeting so complete. Third layer, the outside noise. And I cannot talk about this kind of connection without talking about this because it's real and it lands and it costs something to navigate. People will have opinions. They already do, maybe. Or you're anticipating them. That particular preemptive weight of knowing that when this becomes visible, when people see the two of you together, there will be a moment of recalibration in their faces, a slight pause, a question forming behind their eyes. that may or may not make it to their mouths. And some of those people love you. That's what makes it complicated. It's not just strangers with opinions, it's people who genuinely care about you and whose concern, however misinformed, comes from a real place. And holding the validity of their concern alongside the validity of your own experience is one of the more nuanced emotional tasks that this kind of connection asks of you. Uh, but here's what I want to offer, not as a way to dismiss the concern, but as a perspective worth holding alongside it. The people with opinions are looking at the gap. You are living inside the connection. And those are two fundamentally different vantage points that produce two fundamentally different understandings of what is actually happening between two people. The gap is visible from the outside. The connection is only visible from within it. And you have access to information that no outside observer, however well meaning, however concerned, can ever fully have. The information of what it actually feels like to be in this, what it actually looks like when no one else is watching, how this person actually sees you, how you actually feel when you're together, what this connection has actually brought into your life that wasn't there before. That information is yours, and it deserves to be weighted accordingly. Fourth layer, the soulmate question. And I want to use this word carefully, not in a mystical sense that demands belief, but in the sense that most people understand intuitively when they encounter it in their own life. The sense of there is something about this person that feels like recognition, like I have been looking for this without knowing I was looking, like something in me knows something about this that I can't fully articulate. Like this, whatever this is not accidental. That feeling, when it's real, when it's not projection or convenience or fear dressed up as certainty, that feeling doesn't negotiate with age. It doesn't arrive neatly packaged in a person who fits all the criteria that your life plan had space for. It arrives in the person it arrives in, at the moment it arrives. And it asks quietly, persistently, without concern for your plans or preferences, whether you're willing to receive it in the form it actually came in, rather than the form you expected. Uh, Two rivers that begin at different altitudes don't run parallel forever. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes the terrain brings them together. And when they meet, they don't ask which one started higher. They just move forward as one body of water, together, in a direction neither could have reached, moving separately. Maybe that's what this is. maybe the difference in years, rather than being a flaw in the design, is actually part of why the meeting produced something that neither of you had found before. Two different journeys, two different accumulations of experience, two different ways of moving through the world, arriving finally at the same place, at the same moment, ready in their own ways, from their own directions, for exactly this. Fifth layer, what this connection requires of both of you. And I want to be honest here because I think honesty serves you more than comfort does in this particular moment. A connection like this, one that exists across a real difference, that carries the additional weight of outside opinion and internal navigation, asks more of both people than a more conventional connection would. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but because anything that exists outside the template requires more conscious tending, more deliberate communication, more willingness to name things directly rather than assuming the other person experiences them the same way you do. Because sometimes they won't. Because different seasons of life, however compatible the people living them, can produce different needs, different timelines, different definitions of what forward looks like. That's not a reason to step back. It's a reason to step toward each other with more honesty than most connections demand. More willingness to say, here is what I need. Here is what I'm afraid of. Here is what this looks like from where I'm standing. And to receive the same from the other person with genuine curiosity rather than assumption. Connections that survive the outside noise, that grow stronger rather than more fragile under the weight of other people's opinions, tend to be the ones where the two people inside it build something so honest between themselves that the outside noise simply doesn't have anywhere to enter. Not because they ignore it, but because what exists between them is more real, more solid, more specific than anything the noise can offer. Build that deliberately with your whole attention, with the particular care that something rare deserves from the people who are lucky enough to have it. Sixth layer, what I want to leave you with, and this is the part I feel most strongly, the part that arrived most clearly. When I sat with this message, you did not find this person by accident, and they did not find you by accident. Whatever the story was, however you arrived in each other's orbit, whatever the sequence of events that put you in the same place at the same moment, there is a specificity to it that coincidence struggles to account for. The particular combination of who you are and who they are and what you produce together. That combination is not generic. It is not replicable. It is not something either of you could go find again somewhere else in a more convenient package. And the gap in years, the thing that seems like the complication, the thing that other people point to as the reason this shouldn't work, might actually be the thing that made the meeting possible, the thing that meant you were both exactly where you needed to be in yourselves, in your lives, in your understanding, to recognize each other clearly enough to choose each other, not despite the difference. Sometimes in the connections that matter most because of it. Don't let the noise outside drown out the signal inside. The signal that was there before anyone else had an opinion. The signal that existed in the first moments of recognizing each other, before the gap became a topic, before anyone else was watching, before the question of whether this was allowed had even formed in anyone's mind. That signal, the original one, the one that said, yes, this person, this, trust that above the noise, above the opinions, above the templates that were never designed, with connections like yours in mind. Two rivers, different altitudes, same destination. Moving forward now as one. The years between you are not the distance. They never were. They were the journey. Each of you needed to become the person the other one was waiting for. And now you've found each other across every year that seemed like it was separating you, but was actually preparing you. That's not a gap. That's a story. And it's only just beginning.